exploding. Flying graft you knew. Sentinel protect me. Over! Be my salvation! Together we...
Look, I don't have all day.
Don't stand in my way!
Reduce to dust.
Dark forces approach. Be on guard. Silence! Repent! Together we stand! Who answer shine, holy light!
All yours. All of you at once. I don't do overtime. Come at me. My shield can withstand more than that. Fine.
The power to split and merge matter. Free as a bird. as a bird. Purify! Today will be a fun...
The power to split. During my studies at the seminary, I knew that to uphold justice, I would need to work harder and sacrifice more than others to overcome the shadows that sought to destroy it.
At your disposal. Loading. Sire, together we stand. Mover, be my salvation.
All yours. Come at me. My shield can withstand more than that.
Sentinel protects me. Dark forces approach. Be on guard. Descend! Together we stand! Answer me! Purify! In the name of Imperator!
All yours.
Loading.
No contest. Anything.
Dark.
The power to split and merge matter.
Loading. Diminish. I engraft you new. Sentinel protects me. Judgment time. Together we stand. Ten crystals. Give me strength. Ha! Arduous. Purify! Shine! Holy light!
The power to split. The power within me once terrified me. I wondered how monstrous I'd become if it consumed me. But such terrors have started to fade, with you by my side. The power to split and merge matter.
इसकी शेड स्किन खरीदनी पड़ेगी अब तो, फंड नहीं है मेरे पास।
ए लुची री री री
री री री री री री री री चार्जर खींचा तो नहीं ना जा रहा
नाई नायो सोता शीता
कार्टेथिया भी ट्राई कर लेते हैं, ट्रायल। मैंने कोप किया था वेपन ले आ जाएगा, जो कि नहीं आया।
मैंने कोप किया था मैं आज जीत जाऊंगा,
जो कि नहीं जीते तुम।
नहीं पता। देखो देखो बात सुन, मैं ना एक सीधी बात बताता हूँ। बात ये नहीं है कि ये चीजें नहीं मिल रही हैं, वो चीजें ये भाई एक आधा जीतने दो भाई।
ये मेरा खड़ा खड़ा डिस्कॉर्ड क्यों क्रैश कर गया?
गाइस बिग टिट्स आ गए, बिग टिट्स आ गए, बिग टिट्स आ गए।
तो रिट्रेट में चाहिए, ठीक है।
रुचि का गंदी बातें कर रहा।
शायद समझा करो, कार्टेथिया थी ना। दूसरा मारने लगा मैं इसका। ओह नो, व्हाट द बियांका डूइंग। लेकिन मुझे बहुत मजा आएगा, मुझे आगे वेपन निकल जाए बस। ऐसे का एलिमेंट अगर एक्चुअल होता ना तो हाइड्रा बनना था वैसे तो।
पानी फेंकती है ना।
हाँ ना, लेकिन एरो है फॉर सम रीजन, क्योंकि इस गेम में हाइड्रा है नहीं।
आई मीन ग्लेशियो बना सकते थे,
आई मीन डुअल एलिमेंट बना देते भाई सीधे।
लेकिन मसला पता क्या, उन्होंने आई थिंक वही देखा कि कौन से एलिमेंट का डीपीएस गेम में कमी है।
नहीं, उन्होंने ये देखा है कौन सा एलिमेंट का रोवर निकाल दिया हम लोगों ने गलती से।
शिट,
थोड़ा रियल हो गया।
रियल मैड्रिड बकुआ माता
मुझे अगले
शुड
देखने दो। मेरा ख्याल है अगला विच वॉच है, नहीं एंजल बीट्स है। माय सोल शायद मैंने अपना को कैसे स्पॉइल किया कल थोड़ा सा है ये।
कैसे?
गाने का नाम था माय सोल योर बीट्स। मैंने वहां से पूछा कि इसमें की हार्ट ट्रांसप्लांट वाली शिट है, कहता ओ समझे। आई डोंट थिंक शायद समझे शिट। हमारे अब 6 एपिसोड हो गए, स्टोरी कहीं भी नहीं जा रही, आपस की बात है।
स्टोरी अब आखिरी 2 एपिसोड।
हां
दैट्स इट, और कुछ नहीं।
एक 1-3 कोर्स मिल गया मुझे, पिलग्रिम शेल।
पिलग्रिमेज नजर आ रहा है मुझे।
पिलग्रिम शेल मिल गया मुझे।
घोस्ट इन द शेल।
मैं कुछ फार्म कर सकता हूं।
ओ की का ये था शेर। आ जाओ कैपली मारे। शेर मुझे गुस्सा आ रहा है पूरा गेम से, मैं कैपली मारने जा रहा हूं।
कैपली गैस मारने जा रहे हैं, कैपली।
आ जाओ शेर। लुची हाइप सॉन्ग्स लगाओ। दैट्स राइट।
हाइप सॉन्ग लगाओ। रुको
नहीं हाइप सॉन्ग लगाओ, ठीक है। इसका क्या मतलब होता है पता है ना? हाइप सॉन्ग का मतलब
मैं लगाता हूं हाइप सॉन्ग तुम्हारे लिए।
ये नाडे को नडेश को लगने लगा।
नहीं।
ओए होए, आई एम लॉक्ड इन। उड़ते हुए गया हूँ ये कहती।
मैं एक्सप्लोर करने लगा बैठ के।
अगर मैं ये देखूंगा तो ये बॉस तो मेरे लिए स्पॉइल हो जाएगा।
शेर आप नहीं शेर मेरी बात सुन। बात स्पॉइल होने की नहीं है, तुम्हें इसको इतना फार्म करना पड़ेगा ना अभी, क्योंकि 4 का से ड्रॉप है।
मैं थोड़ी फार्म करूँ।
4 को रोल करने थे मैंने, मुझे याद आया।
चढ़ मारा उमर के।
किधर करती थी।
शेर श्योरली अगला वाला मैं स्टार्ट कर सकता हूँ इसकी एल्ट खत्म होने से पहले ना।
गाइस पहले ट्यून करने दो क्या मिलेगा। ओ एक मिनट हमारा क्या चाहिए था। बेसिक क्रिट डैमेज ऐसे ही।
हां वैसे ही निकला।
और एचपी
हैवी भी मिल गया मेरा साथ। अब
हैवी
ब्लास्ट
भी निकाल
करके देखते हैं।
एचपी चाहिए एचपी।
अब एचपी ना नया है तुम गए।
ओए ये डबल क्यों बनाता है?
अटैक मिल गया। लेकिन चलता है ये पीस चलता है अच्छी तरह।
दौड़ता नहीं।
दौड़ा भी सकते हैं हम इसको। डब्बे का भी इस्तेमाल करने हैं, मुझे एक्सप्लेन कर।
जो 3 वन कॉस्ट है ना, मतलब जो ड्रैगन्स हैं, मेरी बात सुनो, जो ड्रैगन्स है ना छोटे वाले ड्रैगन्स वो मारो, ठीक है। जब तुम्हारे पास 3 नए सेट के 3 आ जाए ना, तो बस वो डब्बे खोल देना। फिर चांस है तुम्हारे पास। फिर तुम्हें बस बेसिकली तो ज्यादा चांस है अच्छी चीजें मिलने।
सही 3 को ड्रॉप हो गया मेरा ख्याल है। दूसरा भी हां
अबे 3 कास्ट नहीं ड्रॉप कराना था, तेरे को बोला भी था।
केड़ा सो रहा है।
केड़ा सॉन्ड नहीं ड्रॉप कराना था ना।
शिट तुमने पहले बोलना था।
बोला था
नहीं तुमने कुछ और बोला था।
मैंने कहा था बस 1 कॉस्ट ड्रॉप करके स्टार्ट कर देना।
कोई नहीं मैं एक्सप्लोर करने जा रहा हूँ। 1 ये अभी अच्छा ये भी व्हाट द फक इज हैपनिंग। 1 कॉस्ट में पिलग्रिम छोटा वाला जो है वो भी आता है ना फिर।
हां
सही क्योंकि यहाँ पे 3 कॉस्ट भी है। पॉपिन दिमाग खराब हो रहा है मेरा सुनते साथ ही में। क्यों लगाया?
अबे मेरे साथ गैंगबैंग हो रहा है।
एक केल्पी के भी वो है। वो
केल्पी तो हेलोग्राम है।
नहीं समझे नहीं। केल्पी के भी क्या वो समझ।
केल्पी अबुअल मेफिस क्यों है?
तो ये अबुअल मेफिस है लूची। नहीं मैंने 8वें फ्लोर पे लिफ्ट पहले बुलवाई तो वो 7वें पे क्यों रुकी है जब बाद में किसी ने बटन दबाया?
क्योंकि वो लिफ्ट नीचे जा रही थी और तुमने डाउन वाला बटन दबाया।
क्योंकि लिफ्ट नीचे से ऊपर आ रही थी। एक्चुअली 8वां आखिरी है।
ऊपर हो गया।
नेट कटेगा अब।
नेट ही कटेगा ना कोई नहीं। शायद हमार
2 मिनट सॉरी।
ओके लोकन पॉपिन।
अबे भाई स्पिरिट बॉम्ब कैप्ली
who has 2 personalities, small and, mommy? If that's not enough, she plays around the arrow erosion mechanic, and the more stacks of this debuff the enemy has, the bigger the numbers she'll produce, which means Arrow Rower is especially going to be amazing for her. Aside from that, her rotations are easy to learn, but offer a ton of versatility, she can group the enemies, and best of all, she's not even a selfish DPS because enemies affected by negative statuses will take more damage after her outro. Oh, and did I mention when she becomes Fleur de Lis, not only can she walk on water, but even walk on air? Yeah, she's that good. But that's the basic overview of her best selling points. How does she actually work then? Well, let's start by taking a look at Cartethiya first, and then we'll talk about Mommy's abilities. So the main purpose of this form is to create and absorb the 3 different blades she summons on the ground: Sword of Divinity Shadow, Sword of Discord Shadow, and Sword of Virtue Shadow. Or in other words, Divinity, Discord, and Virtue swords. You can also see the progress of these swords above HP bar, and if they are lit up, it means they are on the field, and if the icon is spinning, that means she absorbed that particular sword. And it's definitely best to have all 3 of them absorbed because then Fleur-de-Lis's form will gain massive buffs. Anyway, so how do you create and absorb these swords as Cartethiya? Well, by doing her basic 4 combo, Divinity Sword is summoned, and on top of that, basic 4 also applies 1 stack of Arrow Erosion, which from now on, I'll just call Erosion in the video. Then we have the heavy attack. It can summon a Discord Sword, and it can also be performed in mid-air, but you can also create the Discord Sword when triggering her intro, and so at least in Tower of Adversity, you will rarely use this heavy attack. By the way, the intro can be immediately followed up by basic 2, which will be important to remember later on in rotation section. Finally, her skill, besides doing damage and applying 2 stacks of erosion, will also summon Virtue Sword. And when there are swords on the field, now you can absorb them by doing a mid-air attack, where she will plunge and collect them. One thing to note though, using her skill also puts her into mid-air, which means you can immediately plunge and absorb the swords. So usually, it's best to summon other 2 swords, and then use the skill followed by plunge. And that's pretty much it how Cartethiya works. So let's switch over to Fleur-de-Lis by pressing the Resonance Liberation button. After the amazing Sailor Moon transformation, quite a few things happen here. First of all, 50% of her max HP gets consumed, and for the next 12 seconds, she also enters Manifest State. This is where all your hard work gets paid off because now we can see those swords that have been absorbed as Cartethiya appear next to Fleur-de-Lis. If it so happens that you're missing one of the swords, you can actually press the Liberation button again and go back to Cartethiya to create it and obtain it. By doing this, the Manifest State becomes paused until you switch back to Mommy Longlegs, although if the Manifest is over and you switch back to Cartethiya, then you're out of luck. You will need to recast Liberation as usual. But normally, this switching back and forth won't happen if you follow the correct rotation. Anyway, so looking at these sword buffs gained during Manifest, Virtue will enable Fleur-de-Lis's basic 4 to stack 8 enemies, and she also gains resistance to interruption. Then Divinity amplifies arrow erosion damage by 50%, and the interval becomes decreased, and most importantly, Discord gives her basic 5, mid-air 2, enhanced heavy attack, and second skill tap to raise erosion stacks to maximum amount for all enemies, which is quite crucial in AoE situations. And this is one sword buff you do not want to miss out on against multiple enemies. So, long story short, she's absolutely busted during Manifest. But as you've figured by now, Fleur-de-Lis gains a bunch of new moves, and each of them will generate conviction points, which is her forte bar, and once it's full, now you can cast her Liberation to deliver one of the coolest attacks in the game, in my opinion, which will also deal an insane amount of damage in a straight line, heal her for 50% of max HP, and then for each erosion stack on enemy, amplify the damage by 20% up to 5 times, or 100% total. And then she goes back to living life as Cartethiya. Still, let's rewind a bit because it will take a few combos to pull off as Fleur-de-Lis to fill up the 40 bar. And starting off with normal attacks, she can perform a 5-hit basic combo, but you'll often be able to do these hits by weaving them in from other attacks. Like for example, dodge countering allows her to immediately start off with basic 4. But yeah, moving over, by pressing jump, she immediately does upward cut attack, and then she can do a 3-hit air combo, or you can just hold attack in air, and she will do the last 3rd hit of air combo. However, the first 2 hits deal the best damage. Then on the ground, her heavy attack can be followed up by tapping attack, which becomes enhanced heavy attack that will blast the enemy enemies, and then using another attack, she can immediately follow up with the upward cut. Finally, her skill can be used 2 times. First tap will pull in the enemies and launch her into air, and then roughly for 8 seconds, she has an opportunity to use the skill for the second time to attack with this massive sword by plunging to the ground, which then allows her to immediately follow up with basic 3 attack. However, probably the coolest thing about using her skill is that it also resets her air combo, so you can even do some funny air hopping when in open world. Finally, it's important to note that while Manifest lasts, Basic 5, Air 2, and second skill tap all will immediately trigger 1 stack of erosion on enemy and deal its damage. Oh, and most importantly, you can actually keep playing as Fleur-de-Lis even after Manifest is over, but obviously, she will lose all those benefits I listed before, and if you do switch out to another teammate or switch back to Cartethiya, then you will need to recast Liberation with full energy to go through that Sailor Moon transformation once more. Now, I don't know about you, but all these combos can feel really confusing without actually putting them to use. So here's a full rotation in action. And starting off with the assumption her intro is ready, as Cartethiya, immediately follow up with basic 2 through 4 attacks, then use the skill and plunge to grab all 3 swords. Then transform with Liberation into Fleur-de-Lis, use the Echo, and then start off the combo with skill, do a full 3-hit air combo, and tap the skill again, which then allows her to do basic 3 through 5 attacks, and then use her enhanced heavy attack to blast the enemies, and finally, finish it all off with her super mega liberation finisher. Now keep in mind, this is just an example rotation. Obviously, if you're about to get smacked by the enemy, dodge counter will be quite handy, and you could, for example, after tapping the skill for second time, just immediately use her enhanced heavy attack and cast liberation. Oh, and one last thing before we move on to the build section, her first inherent skill boosts other teammates received healing by 20%, while also improving their resistance to interruption, and then Arrow Rover will gain more 40 points from their liberation. And as for the second inherent skill, enemies with 1 to 3 stacks of erosion will take 30% more damage from both Cartethiya and Fleur-de-Lis, but if you have more than 3 stacks, then each stack will further increase damage taken by 10% up to 30%. So with 6 stacks of erosion, they will take 60% increased damage. Fabulous. Anyway, let's talk about her build.
Just look at their mortar placement, expertly done. This is the epitome of sport. They are splitting savants and jetpack geniuses. The movement is so fluid, so fast, you can't stop it, you can't catch. Can he complete the comeback? He's going to try. He shoots, he gets the kill. Now that's how you portal. They're not done yet.
So the first thing to look out for is that majority of her damage output is made up of normal attack damage, which makes sense, and so when it comes to leveling her abilities, focus first on Forte, then Liberation and normal attack, then skill and intro. Now, what's the situation with her weapons? Well, you won't be surprised here. Her signature is about 20% better than the second best option, and it provides a fat 72% HP substat and 12% more from the passive. Then for 15 seconds after casting intro or basic attack, allows her to ignore 8% of target's defense. Plus, if the enemy has at least 1 erosion stack, then their damage taken will be amplified by 20%. However, due to the weapon's substat, her demand for critical rate will be quite high. But moving over, next best option would be Red Spring. She won't really be able to benefit from the second paragraph of the passive, only the first one, but it is what it is. Camellia is too selfish and didn't want to share her signature's full power with anyone else, which is why her third best option, Emerald of Genesis, that can be obtained from the standard banner, is actually only few percent behind Red Spring, and even same goes for Blazing Brilliance and Unflickering Valor. Genesis is the best of 3 by a small margin, which is actually funny because Guardian Sword, a 3-star option, which you can easily craft, has HP substat and semi-relevant passive that boosts skill damage, and it's only behind 27% signature and 6% Emerald of Genesis. So hey, a pretty decent free-to-play alternative. Alright, but what about Echoes? Well, hands down, her best set is going to be Windward Pilgrimage, along with... oh, look at that! That's the Echo that shares the name with her. Anyway, her active Echo will give 20% arrow damage, while the set will provide 40% arrow damage and 10% critical rate boost for 10 seconds after hitting a target with erosion. So like, it will always be active. Now, as for the stats, best loadout will be 44111. I know, shocking, something different this time. And for this situation, going with critical rate and critical damage as 4 cost is recommended, while 1 cost should always be HP percent. Thing is though, you might still end up with not enough critical rate if you get bad substat rolls, so it is totally fine to go with double critical rate on 4 costs, although obviously this will result in lower damage output. However, there's also the 43311 loadout, with 3 costs having arrow damage percent, and it's actually not that super behind 44111, although it also means you might not have enough critical rates, so overall, go for the build that gives you the best consistency to pull off those critical hits. Finally, when it comes to substats, as always, focus on critical damage and critical rate first, then attack percent followed by basic attack and liberation damage bonuses. And as for energy regen, in mono arrow teams, you barely need any of it, like one roll of ER is enough, although in teams without other arrow units, it can go up upwards to 118 to 120% ER. But let's talk about this more in the teams section. Yo, but why is she so tall though? My little blacksmith feels so tiny to her. Okay, so Cartethiya obviously wants arrow units in her team, and the best team so far in terms of overall damage potential will consist of Chacona and Arrow Rover. For Chacona, it's best she's equipped with Gusts of Welkin set along with Fleur-de-Lis. No, not that one, this one. And then Arrow Rover should be using Rejuvenation set. She can actually heal quite nicely here, and her set will also provide decent amount of attack. Now, if you don't want to use or build a rover, Shorekeeper can be used instead, and with all the buffs that she grants, the team's overall potential doesn't fall behind too much. Although, once more sequences can be unlocked for Arrow Rover, her personal damage will contribute even more for the team, and Shorekeeper will fall behind a bit more. Now, as a side grade, you could also use Verena instead, but at this point, I'd recommend sticking with Rover. But what about if you don't have Chacona on your account? Well, then you definitely want to use Rover along with someone like Shorekeeper. But if you don't have her, then we're left with a few 4-star options. S6 Sanhua can be a decent choice with Moonlit set, and surprisingly enough, Altu, who I'm sure barely gets any attention, now can get attention, especially if you give him Cadenza, pistols, and he's S6. Also, this guy's outro amplifies arrow damage by 23%, so pretty decent overall. You could even go with Sanhua with Moonlit and Shorekeeper with Rejuvenating set as a worst case scenario, but you gotta understand that the difference in overall team's damage is quite big compared to something like Chacona with Signature and Arrow Rover. One last thing about Arrow Rover is that it's only thanks to their outro you can go from 3 to 6 maximum stacks of erosion on the enemy, and that obviously helps a lot for Cartethiya's damage potential, since her inherent skill 2 will do more damage because of increased stack amount. So yeah, overall just build Arrow Rover if you're getting Cartethiya. Alright, time to talk about Astrite management. I'll be your financial counselor. And starting with the first sequence, by defeating enemies, now any other mobs nearby will receive maximum erosion immediately, and then when conviction reaches 30, 60, 90, and 120 points, she will gain 25% critical damage for 15 seconds, or 100% total. And then, of course, when you cast her big sword liberation, all of this gets cleared. But sequence 2 is where the big boost in damage is at. Erosion stack limit after liberation transformation will be raised by 3, so with Arrow Rover that should be 9 max stacks now, and next attack will apply 3 stacks to hit enemies immediately. If that's not enough, Cartethiya's, but not Fleur-de-Lis attacks will be boosted, and her plunge that collects swords will reduce her skill's cooldown for each.
The power to split and merge matter. 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 The power to split and merge matter.
Leave it to me. One with the sounds.
A perfect chord. Let the show begin. Crumble.
Such is their blessing. Oceans, bow before me. Ruin is imminent. Exonerate. Windstorm, sweep all away. Such is their blessing.
Thanks for watching.
Overture.
A perfect chord.
Wind rises!
Polyphony. tuning in.
Wind
Solo
calls,
time.
waves follow. The wicked will waves rise. Judgment strikes.
Thanks for watching. A perfect chord. Listen, the trio of destiny. So, their blessing.
Annihilation. The wicked will face judgment. Tempest of slashes.
Thanks for watching. A perfect chord. Perish.